Hello, I'm Neil and welcome to Parallax Retros, where we discuss what works well and not so well with classic games, exploring their development and the people and places that shape them. Continuing my nostalgic deep dive into games I played as a child, I decided I would revisit Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf, once again utilising my Amiga 500 Mini. Will Desert Strike hold up today, or will it crash and burn amid a barrage of enemy fire? Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf is a tactical shoot-'em-up video game released by Electronic Arts, or EA, in 1992 for the Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis if you're American. This game was also ported to other consoles, including the Amiga. The game was clearly heavily influenced by the Gulf War, detailing a conflict between an insane Middle Eastern dictator and the United States. For each mission, you control an Apache helicopter where you have objectives to destroy enemy munitions and buildings, rescue hostages and capture enemies, whilst carefully managing resources such as health, fuel and ammunition. Two of the prominent figures in creating Desert Strike were Mike Posehn, the creator and core coder, and Tony Barnes, who designed the missions and map layouts. Mike, who holds a degree in mechanical engineering and computer science, originally developed PC software before transitioning into games development, founding his own company, Granite Base Software, where he began working on Desert Strike. Tony grew up creating games on Apple and Atari machines, and in 1991 was invited to join EA as they needed someone who could code, design and create pixel art, a rare set of skills at that time. For Tony, working on Desert Strike was a dream, as EA games were one of his influences from an early age. Unusually for a game developer, Mike was not a big gamer. He found that most games were too linear and didn't keep him interested. Mike wanted something new and unique, an open world game of sorts where the player could explore and figure out how to progress by themselves. The balance of meaningful direction and player freedom became the core design of what made Desert Strike feel new and exciting when it was released. While Mike took care of the code, Tony and their colleague John Manley built the content, including mission layouts, enemy placements and unique scenarios. They designed everything on paper first, sketching maps and encounters before hand-coding placements and AI, as this was a faster approach and more flexible than early digital tools. Every character's behaviour, rescue location and encounter was laid out painstakingly by hand. Tony believes that Desert Strike has soul because of how personally the team crafted each element instead of relying on generic tool-generated content. Mike wrote all of the game engine in assembly language and the world builder in C++. The development was done on a Mac directly connected to a Sega Genesis with a writable cartridge. Fitting such an ambitious design into a 1MB or 128K cartridge was a real struggle. As a result, the art was simpler than the team would have liked. Mike felt strongly about preserving the flight feel and resisted producer pushback to change to a third-person control. His priority was satisfying helicopter movement and the specific rhythm that made Desert Strike unique. Tony doesn't see Desert Strike as a typical shooter, but as a thinking man's shooter, a game that required problem solving rather than pure twitch reflexes. They deliberately empowered players to approach missions in different ways, which set the game apart from other action titles of the time. As for the game's tongue-in-cheek story, John Manley was the creative force behind the plot, an overall fun factor, with John collaborating with Tony and Mike to integrate narrative elements seamlessly into game mechanics. Now for a retrospective look at the gameplay. The game has a dramatic opening sequence, with a funky upbeat bass line playing over images of an Apache helicopter flying in the sunset, as the game's title and credits cross the screen. You are then presented with the start of the game's narrative, where you are told that the terrorist General Kilbaba has invaded and occupied a small wealthy country. You are then shown the general in his secret bunker, where he is giving orders to produce missile launchers for an attack. When one of his commanders protests that his plans may start another world war, he comically slaps him round the face before quickly changing his mind to support the general. A news report then comes on detailing that the president is dispatching a special forces chopper. I'm not sure why this is being made public ahead of time on the news. And you see your character enter the Apache helicopter, ready to strike. The introductory cutscene works well at giving you a comical yet dramatic introduction to your character and General Kilbaba, or the Madman as he's later called. The slap from the Madman is genuinely silly. This game doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's all the better for it. Each campaign starts with you choosing a co-pilot who each have a humorous character summary that gives you a hint at what their strengths and weaknesses are, e.g. shooting or good on the winch. You are then free to take off from the frigate in your Apache helicopter and are given full freedom of where you wish to fly. Opening up the map screen, you are given and presented with a list of missions. Failing to complete the missions can result in the campaign becoming more difficult or in some cases complete failure, where you are instructed to return to the frigate and must restart the campaign. Each mission requires a different approach. For example, a common mission early on in most campaigns is to destroy enemy radar sites. These sites are usually flanked by enemy militia, so you can either try and swoop in quickly to destroy the radars and outmaneuver the enemy's fire, or first take out the enemy militia, allowing you to destroy the radars at your own pace. This autonomy of how you choose to complete the game may be taken for granted in modern games, but for this time period was truly unique, working well at giving you a sense, as the player, of being trusted to choose the right approach. Some missions involve destroying buildings, or rescuing hostages, or capturing enemies, or sometimes a combination of all three. On completion of all the missions, you are instructed to return to the frigate to complete the campaign. Planning your routes on the game map is critical to ensuring that you don't run out of fuel, are always well armed, and retain enough armour to take the odd stray RPG. The map tracks fuel drums and ammo crates for you, which you must factor into your routes when completing the mission objective, otherwise risk losing a life, of which you only get 3, from running out of fuel and crashing, or not being able to destroy enemies and being overwhelmed by the enemy's firepower. Armour is regenerated by rescuing friendlies or capturing enemies and taking them to a drop-off point. While it sometimes takes a few tries of a campaign to figure out the best routes, or the most efficient way to complete missions so you don't run out of fuel, overcoming this challenge is quite rewarding. You are presented with decisions as the player. Do you wish to continue the mission with low armour and risk losing a life so that you don't have to double back and waste fuel? Or do you go and drop off people so that you can regenerate some armour and sacrifice the fuel? This is the unique freedom that the game's designer clearly want you to agonise over, and this works well at giving you a sense of autonomy and strategic challenge. Ammo is limited, so engaging the enemy is not always the wisest choice. If they are not getting in the way of you completing the mission, the best thing you can do is outmaneuver or avoid them. If you don't need to engage, for example they are protecting a structure that you need to destroy, then flying in fast and destroying the structure quickly can often be the best choice. The 3 weapons on the Apache helicopter include the chain gun, which does low damage, Hydra, which does medium damage, and Hellfire, which does high damage. You have to be careful not to hold back too much. If you don't destroy enemies quickly, they have considerable firepower against your relatively vulnerable Apache, and you risk losing a life by reserving your ammunition. However, if you are overzealous and wasteful, you will run out of ammunition and lose enough lives to fail the campaign. This balance works well at challenging the player to think tactically when choosing which weapons to use. One thing I do find works not so well is destroying buildings. There is often little reason to waste Hydras or Hellfires when destroying a building, so the process normally involves just chipping away at them with the chain gun, which takes a long time and isn't exactly fun. Playing as an Apache helicopter, you're weak yet fast and manoeuvrable. Taking advantage of your speed and manoeuvrability is key, outpacing the enemy and avoiding excessive damage. The controls mostly work well overall, giving you the ability to strafe around enemies or swoop in for an ambush attack, building up enough momentum to outrun the enemy's fire. I feel the controls for turning specifically work not so well. They're a little sluggish compared to the ability to build up speed or strafe. I did briefly play the first campaign of the sequel Jungle Strike to get a comparison, where the controls for turning I feel are much more responsive and allow for tighter turns. Some parts of the gameplay can be fiddly, such as lowering your rope ladder to pick up enemies or friendlies. However, you can obtain co-pilots who are more adept at this, lowering the difficulty slightly. The difficulty ramps up dramatically in the third and fourth campaigns, which can feel quite harsh, even given the time period the game was released. However, this game is short and was clearly designed to be challenging towards the end of the game to ensure maximum replayability. Difficulty spikes aside, I found that Desert Strike Return to the Gulf still holds up today, providing a challenging experience, giving you freedom to plan out missions how you would like, and a small open world to fly around in. Do you agree with my retrospective thoughts? Please comment below and share your own retrospections of Desert Strike. This has been a Parallax retrospective of Desert Strike Return to the Gulf for the Amiga. Thank you for watching.